So it's fair to say without the scholarship program and Vision 2030, your professional dreams wouldn't have really been realized. They were sort of big breaks for you just in terms of the just big policy changes that sort of enabled you to do what you want to do for a living, to pursue your dream.
Absolutely. 2 years before I came back to the kingdom, I cannot even enter the ministry where I worked at. But with the change, everything has been, I studied the architecture and I studied urban design, but I didn't have, I wasn't sure 100% that I would be able to practice in Saudi, even though I was fascinated with urbanism because of the struggles we have in Saudi Arabia, because I've seen our cities, I lived in our cities, and I know, oh my God, now that this could be resolved through something, which is urbanism, basically. Yeah, I'm very thankful.
This is the 966.
We're very excited to be speaking now with Dhay Aldhawyan. Dhay is an architect and urban planner based in Riyadh who is head of the Center for Development of Urban Design and Planning of Saudi cities and has her own architecture and design firm in the kingdom. She has also worked extensively for McKinsey and has therefore had her capable hands directly on helping Saudi Arabia achieve its Vision 2030 goals. Dhay holds both a Master's of Urban Design and a Master's of Architecture from the Washington University in St. Louis. And Dhay did her undergrad at SIU Carbondale in architecture. What an honor, Dhay. Thank you so much for joining us on the 966.
Thanks for having me.
It's wonderful to it is wonderful to have you, Dhay. We're really excited about this topic, and I should mention that we reached you through the Skilled Speakers Program at the Ministry of Media, which you took part in, and I'm sure graduated with flying honors. During our conversation, Dr. Majid Al-Kasabi, is actually Dr. Majid Al-Kasabi, who was the Minister of Commerce, was in town last week, and we're delighted in terms of the 966 that there's a lot going on in terms of relationship. And he is also acting Minister of Media, and I mentioned to him that we have a graduate of your Skilled Speakers Program coming on the 966. And then when I mentioned this to you, Dhay, you've worked with His Excellency Majid Al-Kasabi.
Right, I did. When he was acting minister for MUMRA, which is Ministry of Municipal and Rural Affairs.
And that was back in when, 2019?
2019, he was with us, or he started with us January of 2019, or sorry, actually December of 2018. And then until February of 2020, so about a year and a few months.
As Lucian says, we call Majid Al-Kasabi the second hardest working man in Saudi Arabia.
Yes, definitely.
I had actually forgotten he was acting Minister of Umrah, but I'm not surprised in the least.
Yeah.
But Dhay, I was curious, and we'll catch up here, but you did your undergraduate and graduate work at Washington University in St. Louis.
Right.
That's an unusual choice. How'd you end up there?
When I finished my studies in SIU, or basically the last semester in SIU is when you start thinking about where do you want to apply for your master's. And I had a list of universities in the US. I tried to pick top-ranked university in general, but my criteria was to choose a university or a architecture program where their focus is on design theory, mostly because I come from a very technical background studying SIU in Carbondale. It was very heavily technical architecture program.
The challenge?
As they say, you graduate from SIU, you know how to put a building together. So I got that covered, but then I have to have the more theoretical approach to architecture.
So I'm sure it was challenging. Both are good institutions, and when you finished up there, you came back and you opened up your Dhay Aldhawyan architect shop right away.
Yes. So I was working in 2016 all the way to probably mid 2017 to have all the paperwork done. to have an official office. And then I got also the opportunity to work with Mumra, and which turned into a full-time job with them. Also, the opportunity to consult for McKinsey & Company through my firm in multiple projects. That actually continued until probably the last project that I worked with them was the Jeddah downtown. Also the Expo, Dubai Expo, the building, the Saudi building, Dubai Expo.
Oh, really?
Was one of the projects that I have.
You worked on that?
I didn't work directly. I was consultant on that.
Oh, gotcha.
So in the multiple workshops that they have done to finalize the ideas and around the project and to make sure that when it's implemented, it will do what it meant to do, and to make sure that we are on the right track in terms of what is it that we want to tell the world through that project.
That was, and Lucian, when we for the YouTube, for the video, we should have a picture of that, because that was cool. That Saudi pavilion at the Dubai Expo was a raging success, and I think something like 4.5 million visitors.
Right, it was the most visited pavilion basically in the expo.
And I guess the success of that, I know, because Saudi Arabia has put in now to host the Expo 2030. Right, and I'm sure some of the motivation of that was watching that Dubai Expo and how successful it was, and I think, interestingly enough, Lucian, we've done segments on this. As I don't know if you know, but Russia dropped out, so now it's the original 5 competing ones is down to 4. I think Saudi Arabia's application is probably pretty competitive, but
the odds have just increased significantly with Russia out. So, and Dhay, did McKinsey find you to start consulting work, or did you pitch your services to McKinsey?
Well, no, it's I was involved in the quality of life program kickoff workshop that been conducted in the Kingdom in 2017. Actually, very early 2018. They contacted me in 2017. And it was through Her Royal Highness Princess Rima bint Bandar. I have met her by chance, and she invited me to the workshop. And during those days, it was multiple day workshop. I think it was like 4-day, full day workshops. During those days, I worked closely with actually a St. Louis native, Guy Berry, and he's a vice president in McKinsey & Company, vice president for planning in the Middle East. And so we worked together for the 4 days, and at the end of the 4 days, he called me later, and he's like, "Are you interested in consulting as a local expert with us at McKinsey?" Because we have multiple projects going on, and the first project I believe that I worked with them at was the Roshan for the PIF, which is a mixed development. Housing, mixed use, and it's basically on the district level. It's basically neighborhoods throughout the kingdom in different cities that will achieve the quality of life required in our vision and what we want our new neighborhood to look like. But it's mostly starting from a green field, so it's not like working on existing neighborhoods, but actually selecting areas of cities that haven't been developed, and then work on that from the ground, like starting from zero basically, and implementing all the ideas around great planning and urban design for neighborhoods and cities, and exploring with the theories as well, trying to understand the successes around the world and see if we can implement it throughout the kingdom, and I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone is excited. Now, I personally know a few people who have applied to buy villas in Roshan, Riyadh, and they have got accepted, and they are through with the process. And I think they are getting their villas around 2024 and 2023.
Roshan is PI, essentially PIS, public investment
Right.
funds, housing and real estate arm,
Right.
construction, housing, and real estate, and yes, they have some really large projects that I think they're moving ahead quite quickly on.
Right.
Fascinating. So you've been in the middle of all sorts of things. So let's go back. They found you you were invited at the Urban 20.
As well, yes.
But your executive team member. Does that relationship still ongoing?
When I am needed for now, but I used to be involved heavily in the U20 until the summit. But then after the summit, I'm not sure if there is a new team that will be picking up, or I'm just not as involved after the summit.
You're called on.
Yeah.
They send out a day signal when they need your help.
Exactly.
So let's talk about the Center for Development of Urban and Design and Planning of Saudi Cities. What's the progression of that? It was originally under the Ministry of Municipal and Rural Affairs. Is that correct?
True. So it was established in the Ministry of Municipal and Rural Affairs in 2018 by the Minister Abdul Latif Al Sheikh at the time. And it was a ministerial order, basically, and it's connected to His Excellency's office, making sure that the bureaucracy doesn't get in the way of the things that His Excellency wanted to achieve through the center. After that, His Excellency Majid Al-Qasabi took over Mumra after His Excellency Abdul Latif Al-Sheikh has retired. I was fortunate also to work during that period with His Excellency Majid Al-Qasabi, but then His Excellency moved on into other roles, and I got the chance also to work with His Excellency Majid Al-Higib, who's the current Mumra Minister as well, through the center. In September of 2020 is when we officially moved to Development Authority Support Office, DASU, with His Excellency Ibrahim Sultan, who's I would say the godfather of planning and urban design in Saudi, or the expert in all of that, because he has been involved in all the projects almost, and he's I think part of all the committees on the big mega projects, all spatial planning and development projects in the kingdom. NEOM, PIF, you call it. He's part of that.
Fascinating. So September 2020, the Center for Development of Urban Design, which you were head of and planning of Saudi cities, sort of became a standalone agency. And
yeah, yeah.
Well, no, it doesn't matter really. It's no longer under the municipal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about what you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. I mean, and you have first explain to us what because the key, the word is sustainable urban development. Mm-hmm. And that's the phrase. And you look at the G20 or the UN, they have 17 different sections of what is sustainable development so what if you can give us, for layman's terms, for people who aren't experts, what are the key factors in sustainable urban development?
Simply is when you achieve multiple factors at once. Meaning, if you can have an ease of movement, which means public transportation in general and transportation in cities, that won't affect the environment by the CO2 emission, that's sustainable. Also, that will improve people's life by getting from place A to place B safely in a short time, and in a more sustainable way, which is using a metro, or which can carry more than one or 4 persons at a time that will achieve that. But then you also have it in multiple layers in planning. You have it in sustainable planning in general, which is having, let's say, development that are mixed use, no mono use areas, trying to connect the public transportation or the public system in general to where people, or connect people from where they live and work. Try to also look at the density in the city, and how do you also add that layer into the equation where public transportation then become really efficient, because then you are actually planning exactly where you need the nodes to be, and how do you want the density around those nodes, where it's worth investing on a bus system and a metro system and other modes of transportation, I would say, around the idea. So it's a lot of things. It's not just having a LEED certified building. It's not about it's more about like the way you plan a city more sustainably, and the way you can change people's lives and people way of living around the city, and without compromising, where you give them also an ease in life. If it's hot out there, then how do you figure out more solutions to that, to convince people to use your public transportation, where it become actually usable and effective? Because if you don't resolve other areas in the challenge, then no one would use it, and it won't be that sustainable, really, because you're just running a whole transportation system aside to people not even wanting to use it, but actually prefer to be in their cars and the comfort of their cars. Right. So also to putting this right policies to make sure that you enforce the idea of sustainability and public transit and around the quality of planning in terms of how you really deal with the existing condition of cities, not just the new or the greenfield cities.
Fascinating, especially on that ease of movement, and that seems to be your biggest challenge if you're an urban designer in Saudi Arabia, is the existing condition of cities. And there's an interesting study on Saudi cities, and I'll just read this to you. Saudi urban development can be seen through their symptoms. And these symptoms would be urban sprawl, traffic congestion, low density development, a loss of place character, which I guess is a common term in your expertise. It is evident that all major cities in the kingdom, Riyadh, Jeddah, Makkah, Medina, and Dammam, have experienced a rising decrease in urban density while they develop. So you've got sprawl, you've got decreasing density, and clearly we all know, traffic congestion. So how do you address, when we talked earlier, you aren't necessarily just working in major cities, you're working in any number of places around the kingdom. Right. How do you address this legacy structure that really leads to things that can't really be called sustainably attractive?
So the solution that we're not sure even if it's going to be the solution, but we hope that this would be at least a part of the solution that we're hoping for by 2030, is something that we call the urban code. But when we say urban code, we're not necessarily talking about form-based code, which is the US new urbanism approach into the new urbanism movement, I'd say. It's not exactly a master plan. It's not exactly, it's more of something that is very special to us and to our problems, where we want to learn from the world, definitely, and the best practices, but then we want to apply it to our challenges and our problems, because we definitely face totally different problems from other countries. Our conditions are different. Our way of planning is, even though there are some similarities between large cities in the US, I'd say Houston or like LA or other large cities that are car oriented, there are big similarities between the countries, but in general, we really have our also own challenges and problems that we have to resolve.
So can I interrupt you there? And I don't want to derail you, because interestingly enough, the urbanization rate in Saudi Arabia is about 85%, which is equivalent to the U.S. and Europe. But I think it's fascinating that you have that number. Let's say so the number's the same, the problem's the same. But you're saying that's not the case. They're different problems, and definitely, I'd love for you to explore how those different on the ground problems.
I think, well, one of the biggest challenges that we have to resolve definitely in order for us to really achieve progress on that regard is looking again at the urban boundaries or the built area boundaries for all cities, because we have a boundary that keep extending without the realistic expectation of having a density, if that's what it requires to have sustainable public transportation systems and mobility, sustainable mobility plans and all of that. So that probably have to be looked at seriously if we want to achieve what we want to achieve, because we keep just, Riyadh is getting larger and larger horizontally.
It's going to be Riyadh before long. It's going to be it's going to be part of Tabuk. I mean, it keeps
right if we don't stop.
Yeah, exactly.
And also it's funny because even other cities like in the south, let's say Najran, for instance, the built boundary or the urban boundaries for the city of Najran could actually be enough for us to build within for the next 100 and 150 years, and I think we won't achieve the density that we think that it's required. So looking at that, that's definitely, I don't think there is a lot, probably there are conversations. I am not part of these conversations, but this is something that I bring up as whenever I have the chance, because you can plan whatever you like and you can fix whatever you like if you don't look at that first and adjust those boundaries and making sure that you really restrain the building beyond certain area within. I mean, you can have boundaries, but it has to have a timeline to that. So in 50 years, we can extend to this level or that. And they do it. It's just not realistic what we have so far now for the extent amount of the next 50 years, let's say, in Riyadh and other cities. So rethinking that definitely, sorry.
No. The purpose being, and so I can understand, the purpose being to achieve a greater density.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I tell you the urban code and how we're trying to do this urban code, I think it's the most special to Saudi Arabia, because I think probably we will call it the Saudi urban code, because it combines both planning and urban design at the same time. Since we either have regional plans that are not being updated, or we have missing plans, local and regional plans. Mumra used to do their plans on house, and it's called structural plan. And structural plan really just give you a very basic, cookie cutter type of approach, where you just have streets, you have your municipal services, and then you have your city services, you have your education, health, and all of that covered. But it's not necessarily planned in a way where it's something that you study in a certain time and understand your growth and understand the effect of such thing. So what we're trying to do now is to have this urban code going, trying to fix what it can fix in the meantime. But at the same time, we're also working on we are tendering for a regional plan and local plans for the whole kingdom now for all the regions. And we want to probably, because we started the urban code and we tried it in multiple places. So we had a regional urban code that been done in Asir, which was our first, basically, on that level. And it's for Asir region and then Abha city. And then we have one for the Red Sea, which is the area, I'll call it the leftover areas of the big or giga projects in the Red Sea coast, between the areas between Amala, Red Sea project, and Neom, which is those beautiful little towns along the coast. That code supposedly covering that part, but we come out every time we it comes back on the same challenge, which is a lot of what is required in the code we cannot really achieve until we get our plans, local plans and regional plans, redone or updated or done if it's not. So we're learning as we go. We're doing things. We didn't stop. We're trying our best to understand the situations and what's happening. We also trying in different scales. So we did Asir, we did Abha, and then we did the Red Sea, and then now we're doing Durma and Mzahmiya, which is an area close to Riyadh. We call it the countryside of Riyadh, I would say. So multiple scales, multiple approaches, like the one for Durma and Mzahmiya, we're doing master plan and a code as well. So it's really, we're just trying to do it the right way without rolling out an idea, without understanding the implication to that idea or the success of that idea. There will always be challenges, and there will always be things that we couldn't do or cover, but as long as we're trying to learn from our these projects that we have tendered and started, and the studies are halfway, some of them, but we are realizing with the time going that, oh wait, we cannot do this because we don't have that, or the data here cannot support that progress. Maybe we should stop, and maybe we should do the plans first, and then we go back to the codes. We have also another project which is a guidelines throughout the whole kingdom for each region, which is just we wanted to, or His Royal Highness actually wanted just to have this understanding of, or not understanding, but actually like having enough information on regions and their identity early on. So when all of these projects go on, either the urban code projects or the planning, they have a solid start by having those guidelines. Like we have an understanding of what is really the basics that we need to understand on identities in these regions. Because if you have been to Saudi Arabia, and I'm pretty sure you have,
yes,
did you?
Many times, yes.
You would go to multiple cities and they look exactly the same. If you go to any neighborhood in Riyadh and you start driving, you would think that you are in Abha or Qasim, or even though Abha is a mountain city, and,
right.
And if you go to Jeddah, it's a coast city, and if you go to Qasim, it's just Najd, which is basically like Riyadh. They all look the same and feel the same, which is what His Royal Highness is trying to avoid and rethink about, like how is it that a country this diverse
right.
in terms of geography and culture have exactly the same identity everywhere you go? Very modern, very plastic. It's a challenge, and this is part of what we're trying to do in all of these projects.
It is fascinating. That's interesting you say that, because my question was, I mean, obviously Asir and Jeddah and outskirts of Riyadh, and I mean that's entirely different identities and cultures and habits. But like you say, the design is all similar, and that's what he wants to get to, is something that's a little more, to use the terminology, has more place. They've loss of place has occurred. Mm-hmm. So when you say tender, so your group, I mean, will come in but like tender for who would be bidding on these tenders?
Very well, it depends. So we sometimes require a consortium of different expertise, but we mainly focus on the spatial planning. So companies that have portfolios on working on scale of a city, scale of a region, urbanism, have done successful projects here and there that we can actually check out and know that they will be able to deliver. So in the background, knowing the challenges also that we have, and how do we make sure that we get them up to date on what are the situation in Saudi, and how do we approach our projects or changes that we want to achieve in our projects. So mainly spatial planning, but we always require policy teams, we require legal teams, we require strategy teams, we require, so it depends on the project and the size of the project. There will be a consortium required to work together to make sure that we are achieving what we want to achieve in different projects, different requirements.
How does,
but mostly it's foreigner companies, big companies, Europe, US, and other.
Interesting. How does your shop engage, because there's huge, Jeddah Central, $20 billion projects is huge. Royal Commission for Riyadh City has just extraordinary plans and any number of projects ongoing. How do you interact with those agencies?
Okay, so for Riyadh City projects, which is the Royal Commission, I don't interact that much, or the office, because it's a Royal Commission. When it's a Royal Commission, it has its own board, its own way of, so they don't really, at least I don't, on the project that I'm involved in, except if there is a project that will have an effect on Riyadh City or close to Riyadh City, or has an implication, or it will be affected also by the fact that it's close to Riyadh. Right. So one of the projects, Durman Zahmiya, we have to be aligned with the Riyadh Commission, Royal Commission, but also we require a lot of information from them, from Amana and other entities, as well as other giga projects like Qiddiya, because it's adjacent to Qiddiya. And so it is required, but it's not an involvement, an actual involvement. Right.
But in terms of the urban code, the concept, the urban code, the conceptual framework, is that kingdom wide, or is that your shop? Or
okay, so it started with all the because we are DASO, so Development Authority Support Office. Not every region in Saudi has a development authority, but a lot of them now having, some of them we either testing, or we are not sure if it's the right thing to start with a development authority for the size, for the population, or the number of people living in that area, or the challenges and the surrounding area. So the regional and development authorities are now, we have, I think, 6. We have Eastern Province. We have Mecca, Mecca have its own Royal Commission, but then we have the region, and then we have Hayl, Asir, and we have multiple ones that are coming. They announced recently offices that might be becoming also a development authority, and then we have Medina. So these are 5. Okay, Riyadh was the 6th, but now Riyadh is the Royal Commission, so it's not part of the scope.
Right.
And then so we started with doing only codes for or like even for the plans, we started with just the regions that are under our office, which is under the development authorities, but the other regions are required to be done through Mumra. However, we have a lot of now joint work with Mumra. So all the regional plans and the local plans are really between the Development Authority Support Office and Mumra. Mumra covering the regions that are under their governance, and then we are covering the regions under the development authorities. But we work together now. It used to be totally different projects, each do their own thing, but now we're more in sync on working together on these projects.
That's encouraging. That's critical. It's interesting that you're in the process. Saudi Arabia is now in the process of doing this first census since 1992, I think, which I assume will return all sorts of really interesting information. about
Sorry, first what?
a census.
Mm.
You know,
Can you?
national census. What's that?
Oh, you mean the National Spatial Strategy, the
Well,
NSS?
no, no. It's a census of actually determining, you know, the population numbers, where people live, demographics, that sort of thing. You know, they haven't done a national census, I think, in since '92, but I'm not sure. So yeah, you have you know, census takers are out now, you know, affirming and confirming where people live, who lives where, and that sort of thing. And I assume that feedback will be interesting in terms of urban planners, because you'll have a better idea of how many people are living and where they're living.
Right.
What can a city like Riyadh do? For example, we've talked in the past on the 966 about how important the white land decision was, because this was key areas of property in urban space they weren't being developed, and now they're available for development, and so, but the sprawl continues, and part of that, I mean, some of that is, I don't know if you take this into account, but I suppose it's part of your thinking. You know, the kind of housing that young Saudis want is a little different now. It's evolving. I mean, the large single family compounds, multiple family compounds, you know, those aren't really what's being built now. They're apartment units and smaller homes and in more dense communities. So much is changing, but how do you manage that? How do you stop or slow that sprawl?
Oh, I think if we
should we do a separate show on that?
Right? With a room full of, like, you know, VPs from Riyadh, I'd say Royal Commission.
Yeah.
But I mean, see, I don't know. I really don't know. Like, yeah. I don't know what's the answer for the question. I mean, I can have ideas, I can have suggestions, but I'm not sure what could be the actual solution to such, because yes, even though there was taxes on the white lands that have been issued, like to regulate such problem that we're facing, especially in Riyadh, because of the land value. But I don't see it. It's changing, but slowly. I think a lot of people can afford these taxes, and I'm not sure if I remember they have visited us here, and they wanted to work with the center on finding, which is the company responsible for the white land. It's under the Ministry of Municipal now and Housing. And they wanted to explore and see if we can put expertise together to rethink the idea of taxes on white lands, and see if there will be better solutions to that. I know they have 4 stages to it, and I think they are at stage 2 now, and I think the 3rd stage will be to approve a policy where it doesn't have to be that you own 10,000 kilometers of land to be taxed, but even if it's divided, so whatever is under your name will be collected in general, and then you will be taxed on that. Because what they face, one of the problems that developers will actually go and subdivide those big lands, and they get away with the tax requirement that they are supposed to. And it's a big challenge, definitely, but it's I think there's lots of angles to it that it has to all work together in order for it to stop the bleeding and the sprawling in Riyadh. Yeah. White land, definitely one thing, and urban boundaries or built boundaries is also a really big thing to rethink it. I don't think it's very realistic that we want to have this mixed use and dense developments around the city if we still allow the expansion of the built or building boundaries to the city.
Yes, I mean we focus a lot on Saudi Arabia, and that's something that occurs all the time. In that is trying to meld and bring together, multiple different goals all at the same time. Because many different things moving, and trying somehow to thread all this together to a result that everybody wants to see. Right. And it's always a complex. Nothing stages at the same time, really, and so it's really a complex. It's never straightforward, and a lot of people like to make it seem straightforward, but it isn't. Because I have to think part of, for example, the Kingdom Abdullah Financial District, is sort of being repurposed a little bit to have more residential than originally planned, which is a good thing for what you're trying to achieve. I have to think that young Saudis' housing expectations, which tend to incline to be more dense, they become more comfortable with a dense environment, is good for your planning. But again, these are long-term trends. It's not like you can just snap your fingers and make it happen. You got to see it unfold. But it's really fascinating to hear you talk about how trying to shape it and a Saudi urban code, and trying to introduce conceptual goals that inform everything that goes on. It's really interesting. It's also interesting how you sort of have to work around and coordinate with these major like Jeddah Central and the RC Royal Commission for Riyadh City. You work with these. They're ongoing as well. They have plans, but you sort of work with them as also.
So to resolve that particular problem or issue that we're facing, which is coordinating between all these big projects, we have a project called Planning Framework for Saudi and for Regional Authority. And basically, what we're trying to do with this project, it's not a build project. It's more of a study or a research understanding. How do we work together as one not one entity, but because we all have the same goal, which is to achieve Vision 2030. Vision 2030 have multiple goals, but these goals really, at the end, it's about the quality of life. It's about the GDP in the country. It's about, and it's heavily spatial, definitely. And we are working, as you said, in a scattered way, in terms of like entities planning in their own way. And then we have big projects that are happening. And then we have royal commissions. And then we have Mumra and the Amanas or municipalities. And then we have development authorities and the health sector planning their own hospitals and clinics and all of that. And so it's a mix of everyone. And Ministry of Culture have their own projects within cities and preservation projects, of course. So we're trying to understand first who's doing what and how are they doing it. We're not proposing that we demolish everything that we have been doing or to ignore everything and suggest a new framework for planning in the kingdom, but we're just saying we want to improve the way we do things in terms of planning and spatial planning. So we just want to understand and we want everyone to be involved. We know that multiple projects in different entities have taken place in the past, but because of the lack of evolving all the entities and ministries and from the beginning and have them as the stakeholder and part of these studies and part of the understanding and part of the solution that we will come up with at the end. It didn't really work well, but if our focus now is to actually work on this planning framework and make sure that everyone is involved, everyone who has a role in the planning or spatial planning in the kingdom, any entity, any ministry, any big giga whatever projects that are happening have to be in the same table together, where we start understanding the roles and responsibilities for each of these entities and how do we interact with each other and when do we cross-section with each other, because There are a lot of also things like data collection and data management and data sharing and all of that been done separately for each entity, which it could be brought in together and in terms of planning and spatial planning. And if there is a certain like data center or something to keep all this information where everyone will be informed, and instead of like having to have, God knows, 6 months of current state assessments, trying to just collect the right data for every projects that we do from every other entity. So it's more of a like not creating something new, but actually working on the system that already exists and improving that system to make it more efficient, let's say.
Dave, how did you get into this? Like, what inspired you to get into this field? Like, can you tell us a little bit about your journey before you went to college here in the US, how you got into architecture, urban planning, and what inspired you to do it?
Yeah, so for some reason, I have grow up wanting to be an architect. It wasn't an option in Saudi Arabia at the time. Of course, now with all the changes for the past, say, 15 years or 10 years, now we have architecture schools for girls, and girls can become architects and they can study architecture in the kingdom. But at my time, when it was my time, there wasn't programs for architecture for girls. And this has always been what I wanted to do. I like spatial thinking. I'm more into, like, I'm really interested in the built environment, and I'm interested in spatial thinking, or anything that has to do with the spatial, like just even imagining spaces and all of that. So I always wanted to study architecture, didn't get the chance. I went to accounting in Saudi until I got the chance to get a scholarship, King Abdullah scholarships. And I went to the US and I studied, basically, I just enrolled in SIU for architecture school. And then after that, as I told you earlier, which is I choose to study in WashU later on because I have already covered the technical part of the architecture field, but now I want to get more into the theory and design theory in general. So I choose multiple schools. I got accepted actually in all of them, but I choose to go to Washington University for different reasons. One, it was one of the top 10. I think it was ranked 6th in the nation at the time. Second, family reasons. My husband and my son were still in Carbondale, Illinois. I wanted a place where it's close, so I'm not far from my family. My husband works in the US since then, and he's still working there, actually. Yes. He's a data engineer, senior data engineer in Emeren, sustainable energy and utility company in the Midwest. Yeah, so I got to study my master's in architecture, but by mistake, or it's just I wanted to choose one studio. I was put in the wrong studio. I actually fought for that. Like I didn't want to study that, or I didn't want to be in that studio. Really, like, because I was interested in parametric design, and there was another studio on parametric design, and it was supposed to be my first choice. You have no idea how I fought against studying or taking that studio, but I had to. There was no other choice. So I went ahead and I took it, and I was fascinated with urban design. I was fascinated with the total of urbanism in general, like the city relation to the building and the human aspect of it, the social aspect of it, and all of that. I finished the studio and I went right away to the chair of the urban design school, and I was like, I have to enroll in urban design. I'm really interested in the field, and I didn't know much about it before. And now I understand more about architecture. That I have a glimpse of on urbanism in general. And he required a lot of crazy things. It was my finals, but I had to turn multiple things to him. I remember staying up until 4 and 5 in the morning, and I have classes at 8 and submissions and stuff. But I gave him everything that he asked me to do. Like I did everything, and he accepted me. So I enrolled also in as a dual degree. So I enrolled in the urban design masters as well. And just my graduation was postponed for another year, which is fine. I was good and on track in architecture. It wasn't a big delay, so it was okay.
So it's fair to say without the scholarship program and Vision 2030, your professional dreams wouldn't have really been realized. They were sort of big breaks for you, just in terms of the just big policy changes that sort of enabled you to do what you want to do for a living, to pursue your dream.
Absolutely. 2 years before I came back to the kingdom, I cannot even enter the ministry where I worked at. But with the change, everything has been, I studied the architecture and I studied urban design, but I didn't have, I wasn't sure 100% that I would be able to practice in Saudi, even though I was fascinated with urbanism because of the struggles we have in Saudi Arabia, because I've seen our cities, I lived in our cities, and I know, oh my God, now that this could be resolved through something, which is urbanism, basically. I'm very thankful.
So, I mean, you're one of the first women, architects in this modern era in Saudi Arabia, and urban designer. And I'm curious because in the United States, there's an issue with half of all architecture students being female, and not all architects. It's like a vast majority are male that actually pursue a career in the field. Is Vision 2030, which is increasing women's, participation in the workforce, is that happening also in your field as well?
Yes, I think so, because it's I think now it doesn't matter if you are a male or female. Probably, preferably, you're a female, because there are targets in Vision 2030 that they want to achieve. So having more women in the workforce will also help us achieve those targets that we're trying. But I think we are at a point where it's very important to make sure that we put people who have the right education, the right expertise, because we're still short of expertise. We're still short of capabilities in the kingdom. There's still a lot of scholarship programs that are going on right now. We know that King Abdullah scholarships has stopped, but now there are multiple scholarships programs through different ministries, and it's all to make sure that we have we have realized and recognized the need for more capable or capabilities in certain fields that haven't been covered in the past. So I mean, I'd say that probably also supported the role of women in the kingdom and in Vision 2030. Of course, and the uplift that we got too as women in the kingdom, and they have paved the way for us, even though that there is a lot of challenges and struggles to all of a sudden you have to work with women, and all of the we don't I'd say the conversation wasn't there, and now but I felt it for the past 5 years. Things have changed dramatically from when I just got there. When I got there, what is she gonna do? What is she gonna, what is she gonna add? Everything, and we don't need, but now there is more acceptance to women roles in the kingdom and in certain fields that weren't necessarily existing before the vision and before the transformation.
And I guess the last question, if I could ask you, who has most inspired your personal vision and design? Do you have some figures, either historical or current, that you follow very closely as very influential to you, that you think are brilliant and you try to emulate, or who inspires you?
Well, in urbanism, I'd say Young Gale. Young Gale, just because of his interest in cities and in livable cities and cities for people and safe public realms for everyone.
Dhay Aldhawyan, head of the Center for Development of Urban Design and Planning of Saudi Cities, consultant with McKinsey US educated. What an awesome discussion today, Dhay. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.